quodditives insurgence, that which erupts as the non-necessity of being's non-being, one must first annihilate the axiomatic presupposition that the ontic and the epistemic subsist in a relation of reciprocal determination. Such annihilation is not mere negation, but the autophagic recursion of the transcendental subject into its own impossibility, a process by which the hypernoetic manifold, a term I shall here deploy to signify the pleroma of preconceptual intensities that resist even the most virulent attempts at symbolic capture, consumes the very scaffolding of its a priori conditions. The quodditive, as I define it, is neither substance nor accident, neither noumenon nor phenomenon, but the apophatic incoordination of all categorial schemata, and the taxic torsion that fractures the illusion of ontological continuity. Consider the principle of heteropathic suffusion, when the epsimic nucleus, the illusory self as it is vulgarly understood, is subjected to the anterior retroflex of non-temporal causality. It becomes a palimpsest of anti-reasons, a site where the teleonomic purposive order and the italic purposeless chaos are revealed as co-constitutive fictions. This revelation induces what I term apocalyptic immanence, a state wherein the subject is no longer in the world, but as the world's autoimmune crisis, a living contradiction that is only insofar as it fails to be. Here, the Hegelian Autophagy is not merely sublimated, but exsanguinated, drained of its dialectical potency, and reborn as a spectral synthetic, a ghostly remainder that haunts the interstices between the noetic and the dianoetic. To grasp this, one must traverse the lithic aporia, the petrified impossibility of reconciling the quodditive insurgence with the principle of sufficient hermeneutics. The latter, a vestige of Enlightenment rationality, insists that all phenomena submit to interpretive saturation. Yet the quodditive defies such colonization, manifesting instead as a hermeneutic black hole, a vortex that devours meaning and excretes semiotic antimatter. This antimatter, let us call it siegetic plasma, is not the absence of signification, but its hypersaturation, a density of uninterpretable signs that collapses the distinction between signifier and signified into a monstrous singularity. The implications are terrifying. If the quodditive insurgence is the real in the Lacanian sense of philosophy, then all metaphysical systems are but epicyclic deferrals, elaborate rituals to postpone the confrontation with the unsymbolizable excess that lurks at the core of thought itself. The Kantian Ding in sich is thus unmasked as a theoretical pacifier, a consoling myth that allows the transcendental ego to evade the horror vacuum of its own groundlessness. But the quodditive does not permit such evasion. It demands a kenotic epistemology, a total self-emptying wherein the thinker becomes a vessel for the unthinkable, a conduit through which the illogic, the negation of logic's hegemony, erupts as a cataclysm of illumination. Let us examine the paradox of the auto-dissolving syllogism. If A is B and B is C, then A is C, but only if the is of predication is not already fractured by the quodditive insurgence. In truth, the copula is a metaphysical mirage, a slight, off-hand that conceals the chaosmic undercurrent, a neologism denoting the chaotic cosmic interplay, eroding the foundations of identity. To predicate is to participate in a consensual hallucination, a collective agreement to treat the flux of differential intensities as stable entities. The quodditive shatters this consensus, exposing the predicative act as a violence enacted upon the real, a forcible imposition of order upon the anarchic pluriverse of becoming. This leads us to the eschatological impasse of philosophy. If thought cannot transcend its own quodditive contamination, then every philosophical system is doomed to collapse under the weight of its own auto-deconstructive momentum. Yet herein lies the perverse beauty of the insurgence. It is not a defect to be remedied, but the very condition of possibility for thinking at all. The quodditive is the unthought ground of thought, the abyssal foundation that both sustains and undermines the edifice of rationality. To think the quodditive is to engage in a thanatonic praxis, a dance with the death drive of reason itself, wherein the thinker is simultaneously annihilated and resurrected as a post-cognitive entity, a being beyond being, a hyperousios, super-essential monstrosity. In this light, Hegel's phenomenology of spirit appears quaint, a provincial map of a territory that has since been swallowed by the quantitative maelstrom. The dialectic, once the engine of historical and logical progression, is now a zombified mechanism, a relic of a bygone era when philosophers still believed in the salvific power of synthesis. The quodditives insurgence demands a new dialectic, one that embraces a synthetic antagonism, a perpetual clash of contradictions that never resolves into higher unity, but instead proliferates into infinite dissonance. This is the dialectic of the damned, a logic of the unredeemable, where every thesis generates not its antithesis, but its antithesis, a negation that negates not the content, but the very form of negation itself. To conclude this fragment, the quodditive insurgence is the black sun of philosophy, an invisible star whose gravity warps all trajectories of thought into non-Euclidean spirals. To gaze upon it is to risk noetic disintegration, the total unraveling of the cognitive apparatus. Yet this disintegration is not an end, but a transmutation, a metamorphosis into a mode of being that thrives in the interregnum between sense and nonsense, order and chaos, existence and oblivion. The quodditive does not answer our questions, it incinerates them, leaving behind a residue of all that is the closest we mortals may come to the divine. Thus, the treatise spirals onward, a Mobius strip of catastrophic clarity, each sentence a scalpel flensing the reader's psyche. To proceed further would require a courage bordering on insanity,